Hello and welcome back. What you have here is a charging port that's soldered on a flex from a phone. Now, very first thing I did here was to plug in a charger, a cable, and check for the 5 volts on the pins of the charging port, so I can conclude if the port is broken inside or not. So I didn't have any 5 volts, so I proceeded with replacing the charging port, because even though the pins might be soldered on the flex, the port could be broken inside and it's not gonna give you a 5 volts on the 5 volts pin. So here we start to desolder the port. Now I didn't want to heat up the flex because it could bend, and so I used the low melt solder and flooded all the port and the pins, especially the pins. Don't miss the pins, because if you flood only the port itself and you lift the pins, you might lift pads. But if you flood all the port like this, how I did here, and the pins as well, and you have a good enough iron, you can easily take off the port like this without even damaging a bit the flex. Now after this, the flux is still good, so we don't need to clean off the flux. We use wick. We use chem wick, not the good wick. We tried good wick, but it's not as good as chem wick from Chemtronics. And here we wick off the remaining solder, and we prepare the board for the new port. Obviously after this one we clean up. You see now the flux starts to get burned, but until now it was fine. But now when it turns like this brown, dark brown, then you know you have to start cleaning up the flux. Now here we start to clean up the board, and if you find it hard to clean up the flux, you can always heat up a little bit the board, like 150 degrees C, and the flux is gonna liquefy and it's gonna be way easier for you to clean it up. Here we try to trim up a little bit from the back legs of the charging port. We only had the one that had a little bit of a bigger legs on the back, so we take the diamond bit and the Dremel and we trim them a little bit smaller. As you can see, after we fit the port again, it fits perfectly. It only needed a little bit of a trimming on the back legs. Now we start the resoldering process. Usually you want to use flux in this situation, but the solder that we are using, it has 2% flux concentration with it, which is good enough for this job, and it doesn't really need any extra. But as soon as we see that the solder is not flowing anymore, we just put some flux back on, and it's game on from there. On these back legs, we actually had to use a smaller diameter solder, which doesn't have that much flux, and we had to compensate by putting some Amtech flux on the board to compensate the lack of the flux from the solder. Now the solder and the flux are not the only things that makes a joint look nice or makes a joint to be soldered correctly. The size of the tip of the iron and the power that it has and the quality actually make a very big difference in these kind of situations. So for example, it doesn't matter if you have a very good, high quality flux and very high quality solder. If you are actually using a Chinesium grade soldering iron, it's not gonna do the job. It's not gonna have the power to deliver the heat required, or it might deliver too much power. In that case, the flux will just instantly burn off the board, and it's not gonna do the job of flowing the solder to its place. Now here we decided to use some paste solder just to change the things up a bit. We could have used this smaller tip with the standard solder, but we decided to change it up a little bit and see how this works on FPC charging port like this. And by the looks of it, it looks pretty good, but I always like to put some extra solder on the pins, not to leave them with very little amount of solder on them. Like, see what I'm doing here, I'm just trying to put a little bit extra on the end, because that's gonna give it strength and it's not gonna break so easily. But if you leave it like that, it might break in the future. So here, when soldering this big lag, you will notice that I swapped to the bigger tip. That's the reason why the joints that we are having look good, because we understand the heat dissipation, and that you can't have a joint, even though you use very good flux and very good solder, you can't have a good joint if there's not enough heat to heat up both the motherboard and the charging port, or in this case the flex and the charging port. You have to have all of them in a good combination of each. But if you are using a small tip, the joint is gonna be a cold joint, and it doesn't matter the quality of the flux, or it's gonna be a cold joint, and the cold joint it's gonna wear out very rapidly and it's gonna break, and you're gonna have the customer come back in warranty, and that's the last thing that we want when this kind of repairs. Just to swap the tip is gonna take like 2, 3, 5 seconds to heat up, and it's gonna do the job. That's gonna guarantee like 90%, 99% that the port is not gonna come back for a warranty repair. Now all we did here was to clean it up and the job was done. Now if you like the video and it helped you in any way, just leave a like, and we'll see you on the next one. Have a nice day.